Texas is probably the freest state in the country. So even though the Biden administration seeks to attack Florida, they hate Texas so much more. Now, we're right now in this brutal cold snap. It's snowing all over. Texas is shut down because of the snow. I'm here in Tennessee. We're completely buried out there in snow. As a man from California, I am obliged to be completely horrified of snow. Look at this. This is like Minnesota. Look at my waterfall. It got killed and buried. What do? Am I supposed to shovel it or something? What is this? What is this substance? A bunch of lunatics are going to tell you this is due to global climate, blah, blah. Because if it gets warm, it's global climate change. If it gets cold, it's global climate change. If it stays the same, it's global climate change. Global climate change is an anti-science religion. Atheistic people will still create a religion in their own image. Mankind is built for religion. Richard Dawkins, the atheist, even said that. We have a part of our brain that is made for religion.
Religion. And the kind of thing I'm thinking of is a tendency to obey authority. A tendency to obey authority, especially in a child, is a very, very valuable psychological property.
Oh, a childish belief in obeying authority, like wear a mask, like recycle, like don't question election results. And he doesn't understand how it evolved. I don't believe in evolution, but I'm only saying that they agree that mankind is inclined to religion. So of course, if you're an atheist, you're going to come up with a physical, particle, materialist-based doomsday religion that has its prophets, has its heretics, prophets like Al Gore, heretics like anyone who opposes the global climate fiasco political takeover. And of course, they have their book of Revelations, their end times argument of Armageddon, that the oceans will rise and flood the world and everyone will be starving and standing in lines. That, I believe, is because that part of the religious brain, which ought to be correctly attuned to the Bible, when you remove the Bible, you don't get rid of religion. You just put in a false religion. That's why I'm always appealing for the true religion. Is having no religion isn't an option. You'll just make up something. You'll create your own God. Or maybe you'll be your own God. Everyone's arguing over what happened in Texas with the wind turbines all froze up and stopped providing energy. And then there was a blackout of some kind where they couldn't get energy around Texas. Of course, you have the left said, which might be true, they said, no, it's the natural gas lines, that shut down and so couldn't provide enough power. As they're doing political football back and forth, no one will tell you the actual truth. I'll give you the truth. This, of course, is empirical evidence. This cannot be refuted by fair-thinking normal people. But there would be no energy shutdown if the majority of their power came from nuclear power. The safest, cleanest, best way to provide power for any given state, which is also poo-pooed and practically regulated out of existence. Power crisis puts Texas small government policy choices in the spotlight. Democrats never want to pass up an opportunity to expand government. That's where they get their jollies. They just can't rest unless there's a big government, expanding government solution. And so small government type states like Texas are a threat, a huge threat to the U.S. government, to Democrats, because they can't stand the idea of small government and independent thinkers. Now, what's going to happen is if you're an independent, small government state, you're going to have problems like your power grid is not on the national grid anymore. So it may destabilize in storms like this. That happens. A storm like this, a freak accident storm like this shutting down Texas is not an indictment of Texas or small government. But that's how it'll be used. Here's Chuck Todd. As it turns out, most Texans are on a completely different power grid from the rest of the country, and it's by design to avoid regulation by the feds. That sounds like my kind of place to live. I don't know about you, but I don't care. That's where I want to be, where there's no Fed involvement. And by the way, the philosophy of evading regulation still runs strong in the state's Republican Party to this day. Yay, Republican Party. You haven't drunk the punch. You haven't drunk the Kool-Aid. Former Texas governor and energy secretary, exclamation point. Look at this exclamation they point. Energy secretary, can you believe it? Rick Perry said that Texans would be without electricity for longer than 3 days to keep the federal government out of their business. That is true. That's a sacrifice some Texans are willing to make. And that's smart. You don't want the federal government to come in and start solving your energy problems, especially with the Green New Deal looming as a threat. So basically, this is all just Green New Deal environmentalist stuff. This is a war against Texas for creating the most oil and, a concentration of oil, which greenies call bad. And of course, this is really just punishment for Texas going for Trump. They must be destroyed by the Biden administration. Look for other swing states and conservative states to be punished by the Biden administration. We already saw this in Florida, where they threatened to shut them down over a recent COVID outbreak. Now you have Texas, where the government is saying, hey, we'll come take over your energy grid. The revenge streak and the mean streak, the cruel streak on the left just knows no end. There's no mitigating power because they believe it is moral. If I was going to guess which state was going to get hit next by the Biden administration, I would guess Arizona is probably next. What ends up happening, this is why all of your environmentalist friends are the meanest, accidentally, the meanest people you know. Environmentalists stopped the use of genetically modified seeds in third world countries. They said we would not buy their grain if they were GMOs. And so they could not produce resistant strains of corn that could stop bugs from eating them. So their yields went down and they got starved out. We also have the banning of DDT spraying, where in the third world, in these poorer countries, poorer areas, they would do mass DDT spraying to kill off the mosquitoes to prevent malaria. And we would not help them with we would just basically cut them off. They stopped doing DDT spraying. And basically a malaria outbreak has killed about 50,000 people, brown people, by American elite, snobby, dictatorial environmentalists. The reason why we have air conditioning and cell phones and cars and the most prosperous country in the world is because we were allowed to go through both a industrial revolution, and we were allowed to bring in and spend and use oil for our power grid. What America does with the Green Deal and the Paris Climate Accord is they make other countries, they poo-poo their use of oil and try and reward them for using a little cute windmills and solar energy, which does not produce enough energy compared to the combustion engine or compared to nuclear power, the only clean, green environmentalist solution. They'd never let Uganda use it, So I'm just saying, for developing countries, they need to go through their coal and oil. We might have to export it all to them, but you're not going to have a civilization if you relegate it to windmills and solar energy. And that's where they get the brunt of our snobby, rich, elitist environmental policy. I'm Doug TenNapel, in exile.